Those of you who know me or have listened to a significant number of my sermons knows that one of my worldviews is that Christianity was trucking along for a while, and one of the big mistakes we made occurred in like the 1940s and 50s, where you start whitewashing the stories of the Bible, okay? And we take out a lot of the grittiness and some of the bad language and all this sort of stuff that existed in the Bible because we wanted it to be easier to digest and more proper and prim. And my criticism is that life is gritty. Jesus was too. And sometimes it's really important to get the lesson from that to get the grittiness of what's going on. And this is probably one of the best examples in the Bible of how we whitewash something so much that we started to lose its meaning. Because I think if I asked you this particular passage I just read, what was it about? I'd probably get someone who'd say, well, he insulted Herod. You're not wrong, he does. You'd say, well, he's performing miracles, so it's yet another miracle story, though it's not really a story because it just says he's performing miracles, doesn't actually tell you a miracle. And it knows that he's headed to Jerusalem, and he seems to be saying things aren't going to go well once I get there, right? Very blah. Very like, okay, some predictions, moving on. And yet, well, none of that's totally wrong. There's a huge, important thing missed if we don't get the grittiness of what's going on. To get the grittiness, you either have to go to really old Bibles or you have to go ahead and read it in the original language. And the key to the grittiness of what's going on is that in the first part, you have Pharisees coming. And it's worth noting the patristic fathers were split as to who these Pharisees were. One camp believed it was Joseph of Arimathea, who comes because he likes and cares for Jesus and is trying to warn him away from doing something that's going to kill him. There is a second tribe that says, no, it just says Pharisees. These guys weren't being honest. I like the second version better. It makes more sense, because if it was Joseph of Arimathea, they should have said his name. They do in other places. So why did they just say random Pharisees? I think it's because they're not being honest. Let me walk you through the interaction. These Pharisees come and say, hey, Jesus, buddy, you've stepped into Herod's territory, his jurisdiction. Herod really doesn't like you. You should probably go that way because Herod is planning to kill you. And if you go to Jerusalem, he's definitely going to kill you. Here's the thing, though. The early church would have known it wasn't Herod. Herod had his chance, right? After the Sanhedrin grabs him, they take him to Herod. Herod could have just lopped his head off. Pilate wouldn't have cared. That happened every day at Herod's court. He killed people all the time, but he doesn't kill Jesus. He's like, hey, you're Pilate's problem. Let me package you up and send you to him. It's going to be a great joke between the two of us. So Herod doesn't actually kill him, right? And we know by this point, because if you read earlier, the Pharisees have already started saying, like, dude, if this guy goes to Jerusalem, we got to kill him. See, what I think is going on here is the Pharisees have come and they're playing the anonymous person game. You know, where you go to someone and you say, hey, there's this person who's not me, but I can't tell you who they are, who's really upset about this thing, but of course it's not me, it's them. Anyone ever run into that sort of reasoning? Yeah. They're playing the anonymous person game, except for they're being a little bit more sly. They're saying, oh, it's Herod. Jesus responds in a hilarious way. To get the hilariousness, you got to go to the ancient Greek. And I know that always immediately everyone goes, oh my God, that's snooze fest. No, really, it's funny, guys. So we interpret it as fox. Ancient Greek, like Spanish, has masculine and feminine. Okay, it's built into the word rather than the use of pronouns like we do in English. Okay, so anything can be masculine or feminine, and much like Spanish, let's use the word for cat. Usually when you speak and you say cat, you would say gato, but technically the O means it's masculine. But just like in Spanish, you could say gata, but since most of the time people don't care about the gender of your cat, if you're talking sort of neutrally, you default to the male, right? Which is why if you talk to someone about their cat and you're talking in Spanish, almost always you'll use the word gato, unless the cat being female is somehow important to the conversation, right? Same thing applies in the Greek. And this is where it gets hilarious. The way he phrases it is to phrase it not in the masculine, but in the feminine. He's calling Herod a female Canine. Follow so far with the church inappropriate language? But he's adding an extra twist to the knife by saying canine fox, because foxes were considered cowardly. Why? Because when a wild dog comes for your sheep and you confront it as a shepherd, it fights you. It has the honor to stand up and fight to the death to get it. You go after a fox like, oh, that looks bad, I'm out of here. Foxes are considered cowardly and sneaky because of their cowardliness. So he's basically saying, you're a female dog, but that's sort of mean to dogs, you're a fox because you're cowardly and you're dirty. And then he follows up with, tell Herod, I'll be here today doing what I'm doing. I'll be here tomorrow doing what I'm doing. I'll be here on the third day doing what I'm doing until I head to Jerusalem. And then I'm going to do what I do there. Dude, that's like basically saying, this is my house. Guess what else is my house? Your house. So if you got a problem with me, come today, come tomorrow, come on the third day, and if not, I'll come to you. You fox, I'm ready to fight. Okay? He is throwing it down. Now, I don't think he's throwing it down with Herod. Because I think he knows that they're playing the anonymous game. So I think he knows that the way Herod views the world, Jesus is no threat. He isn't worth killing. We learned that on Maundy, Thursday, right? Because it's basically what Herod says. He's like, you're a loser. I'm not going to kill you. You're not worth chopping the head off of. You're no John the Baptist. You know what? I'll make you Pilate's problem. I'll send you to Pilate. What Jesus is doing is he's calling their bluff. I think he's saying Herod in quotes. Yeah, go tell Herod. I'll be right here if you want to deal with me for the next 3 days. And then I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm going to keep doing that there. And if you got a problem with me there, find me there. I'll tell you exactly where I am. He's not saying it to Herod. He's saying it to the Pharisees who are there that day. He's saying, you guys are such cowards, you won't even claim what you're saying. You won't even stand up to me now, and you're not going to stand up to me for the next 3 days. I dare you. You know what? I'm going to go to Jerusalem. Let's see if you stand up to me in Jerusalem. You know what? You probably will stand up to me in Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, where prophets go to die. That was their seat of power, right? Yes, it's Herod's, but it's also theirs. Yes, it's Pilate's, but it's also theirs. See, what he's really getting at in that interaction is he's calling them out because at the end of the day, Herod doesn't kill him. At the end of the day, Pilate only sort of kills the guy, right? Pilate meets the guy and he's like, you're no political threat, which is not untrue. Jesus was not a political or military threat to Pilate. Pilate's like, dude, I'll just torture this guy and release him. He isn't worth time or the cross to kill, right? Then he comes up there again and he says, basically, I'll release the guy who's actually a political threat, Barabbas, or this guy here who's just sad. Like his guys only had 2 people with swords. Pilate's world, that's what matters. How many swords you have, how many soldiers you have. Jesus got nothing. He got Peter. See, what kills them isn't really even the Pharisees and Sadducees themselves. It's their fear. Because they kill him because of what they fear he might do and how Herod and Pilate might react. Herod and Pilate, if you lead a revolution, will just kill you. They have no problem with that. They kill tens of thousands of people every year. That's what they do. That is their job. Keep order, all costs, no matter how you have to do it, just do it. They're most definitely the villains of the story. The problem is, it's the fear that grasps the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sanhedrin of what Jesus might do and then how all the powers that be might react. And it's not fear because they're bad people, it's fear because they're good people. They are looking at their communities as pastors, essentially, as theologians, essentially. Those would be sort of our equivalents. And they're saying, I don't want my people to get massacred. And this Jesus guy might lead a revolution, and people really like him. And if they do, I know what's going to happen. Herod and Pilate will bring down the army and just start arbitrarily killing anyone they think might have had anything to do with the revolt. Because that's what they do. That's what they had done. That's what they will do. But they're so scared of it. These good people, these holy people, these righteous people killed an innocent man. Because that's the power of fear, the power of anxiety, the power of not dealing with our feelings on the inside. Is that it clouds our judgment and leads us to react in ways that aren't true to who we are, aren't true to the child of God we are, aren't true to the goodness that lives inside of us. This whole story is a story about combating fear, calling out fear, and ultimately calming fear. Why? Because the way to get a good person to do a bad thing, regardless of time or culture, is to get them scared of what might occur. And get them to stop asking about what is occurring. So as you go out today, take a few minutes in your life on all the different levels that is you. And ask yourself, has fear grasped you? Has anxiety grasped you and led you to not be the best you or not be the type of you God wants you to be?